when a respected bishop tried to pull rank on one of the most influential pastors of our time. No one expected the response that followed, but Pastor Lovy stepped up to the mic and dropped 5 words that shook the entire faith community. "You don't control me." What seemed like a simple statement has now ignited a storm of power struggles, pride, and a church feud spilling far beyond closed doors. This isn't just about authority, it's about influence, freedom, and the battle for truth. And the world is watching every move. And trust me, the details of this clash will leave you questioning just how united the church really is. This is no ordinary pulpit disagreement, it's a full-blown showdown, shaking the very foundations of the gospel community. On one side stands Bishop Paul Morton, a legendary figure whose decades of ministry carved him a place of honor and influence across the globe. On the other, Pastor Lovy, the prophetic firebrand of a new generation, known for his fearless teachings, celebrity ties, and unapologetic voice. What began as whispers about control, influence, and the future of ministry has erupted into a public confrontation that nobody saw coming. In this video, we'll pull back the curtain on what really fueled Pastor Lovy's bold declaration, why Bishop Morton's camp is fighting back, and the deeper truth this feud reveals about leadership, loyalty, and legacy inside the modern church. But make no mistake, this is bigger than just two men. This is about a power shift that could redefine who truly holds the microphone of influence in gospel ministry today. So buckle up, because we're diving into every twist, every allegation, and every behind-the-scenes detail that exposes the storm shaking the church like never before. Let's go back in time and see where it all started first, though. We must first examine the past interactions between these two well-known religious figures in order to see why Pastor Lovy's "You don't control me" statement is generating so much media attention. Paul Morton, the bishop, is not your typical preacher. The Full Gospel Baptist Church Fellowship International, which he founded, changed the way many black churches function. Innumerable leaders have looked to him for decades as a spiritual father, providing them with guidance, knowledge, and the authority that comes with age. His voice has unquestionably impacted the church world, inspired millions, and influenced gospel music. However, the next generation of ministry is represented by Pastor Lovy. He left his lucrative singing career to start one of the fastest-growing prophetic ministries in America. He is originally from Kenya. His method combines profound spiritual lessons with a contemporary, approachable style that appeals to younger audiences, including influencers and celebrities. Lovy operates in a field where influence frequently stems from charm, social media reach, and international internet platforms, whereas Morton hails from a time based on traditional church structure. According to reports, the two met through mutual ministry contacts a number of years ago. Early exchanges appeared friendly. According to reports, Lovy showed respect for Bishop Morton's heritage, while Bishop Morton praised Lovy's vigor and reach. However, rumors began to circulate in ministry circles as Lovy's popularity began to soar. According to some sources, Morton started to believe Lovy was acting too freely and eschewing established mentorship systems. According to others, Morton merely wished to cover Lovy spiritually, a phrase frequently used in church leadership to refer to a senior leader's accountability and direction. This is where the tension began to build. Lovy has always been explicit about how he wants to run his ministry, even though he is courteous. According to people close to him, he didn't want to be subjugated by a high official, no matter how esteemed. This divergence in leadership philosophies eventually started to cause conflict, and soon, the public would witness that conflict. Here's the problem, though. It was not behind closed doors that marked the true turning point. It occurred when one public statement ignited social media, and that's when the real drama starts. The pivotal moment did not occur during a private phone conversation or a quiet meeting. It happened right in front of everyone on the planet. It started when Bishop Paul Morton, speaking to church leadership during a live-streamed service, made a remark that many interpreted as a direct jab at Pastor Lovy. Although Lovy wasn't specifically mentioned by Bishop Morton, it was difficult to ignore the connotations in his remarks. He talked about younger ministers who are more focused on establishing their personal brands than on advancing the kingdom, who have forgotten their roots, and who refuse to submit to spiritual authority. People in the room nodded, but rumors went viral on social media, with tags like, "Was this about Lovy and Bishop Morton throwing shade?" Clips started making the rounds, and within hours, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok were inundated with thousands of comments. Some backed Morton, arguing that his remarks served as a general cautionary tale for the leaders of the future. Others felt that, considering their recent tensions behind the scenes, it was a clear criticism of Lovy. The report was taken up by Christian news sites and church gossip blogs, which fueled an already raging fire. Pastor Lovy took a while to reply. He didn't say anything for days, and people's curiosity was piqued by that quiet. Did he not pay attention to the remarks? Was he planning a calculated reaction? Both supporters and detractors conjectured, analyzing each of his most recent sermons to determine whether he had subtly retaliated. Lovy eventually addressed it at one of his own live broadcast services. The room fell silent as he stood in front of his congregation and said, "You don't control me." His tone was firm yet calm. It wasn't yelled. Although it wasn't theatrical, there was no denying the gravity of those statements. Lovy went on to remark that, although he respects religious leaders, no one has the authority to tell him what God has put in his heart. In an instant, that video went viral. Lovy's supporters applauded him for advocating for himself and accepting the autonomy of his vocation. He was criticized for his conceit and disregard for spiritual authority. "You don't control me" became a catchphrase for younger influencers and pastors who felt under pressure to follow outmoded leadership practices. It wasn't simply Lovy's words that set off this combustible moment. It was how it revealed a more profound rift inside the church. It was more than just a dispute between two men. It was about a generational conflict over who should be in charge of the ministry, how it should be run, and if tradition still has the last word in a time when technology has taken over. However, after the announcement, rumors of a potential private altercation between Lovy and Bishop Morton started to circulate, despite the fact that his followers were encouraging him. Furthermore, some insiders claim that the events that took place behind closed doors may have been even more dramatic than what the public witnessed. The purported private altercation between Pastor Lovy Elias and Bishop Paul Morton elevates the already acrimonious public exchange to a whole new level. According to several people close to both leaders, Love's "you don't control me" statement went viral not long after. Morton got in touch and asked to speak privately. Depending on your point of view, it was either intended to be a calm gathering to resolve the issue or a last-ditch effort to correct Lovy before the drama got out of control. Those with knowledge of the situation say the meeting was set up in a covert manner. There are only a few reliable assistants present, no cameras, and no public announcements. According to reports, in order to avoid attracting notice, it was held in a neutral setting distant from both of their home faiths. However, in today's world, virtually nothing remains secret, and within days, rumors about what was spoken behind closed doors started to circulate. According to some insiders, Morton began by informing Lovy that he was disappointed and that his remarks were disrespectful to ministry leaders. According to reports, he reminded Lovy of the biblical precept that spiritual fathers should be respected and that people should not revolt against those who came before them. He claims that Morton forewarned him that pursuing independence could result in loneliness, exhaustion, and a decline in credibility among the larger church community. These same sources, however, claim that Lovy refused to back down. According to reports, he advised Morton that influence should be shared rather than dominated, and that respect does not imply giving up the calling God gave him. According to one source, Lovy told Morton directly, "With all due respect, you don't control me and you never will," repeating his widely shared statement virtually word for word. According to reports, tensions in the room increased. They raised their voices. It has been suggested that Lovy was starting to resemble Morton, who reminded Lovy of his public criticism of leaders who had gone wild. According to reports, Lovy retorted that a lot of young pastors are fed up with outdated leadership models that feel more like gatekeeping than mentoring. Nobody had really given in by the end of the conference. Morton thought he had defended his position, so he left. Lovy departed with the conviction that he could not compromise his independence. But one thing seems to be clear to both. There was no immediate end in sight. The most intriguing aspect is that, although neither guy publicly acknowledged the meeting, enough information has come to light from those who knew them that it's difficult to assume nothing happened. And that begs a more important question. What does the unity of the church signify if this quarrel is real, particularly with so many younger pastors eagerly awaiting the outcome? However, personal differences aren't the only aspect of this dispute. It's drawing on something far more expansive: Because there is a profound generational difference that has been subtly growing for years beneath all the headlines and soundbites. Bishop Paul Morton and Pastor Lovy are having more than a personality conflict. It reflects a much more profound change that has been simmering for decades in churches all around the world. You must take a step back and consider the bigger picture in order to truly appreciate the gravity of this dispute. A power struggle between the church's traditional leadership and a new generation of independent pastors who are changing the face of ministry. Bishop Morton is a symbol of the conventional leadership style that dominated the 20th century. Young pastors usually advance through the ranks in this paradigm under the supervision and control of more seasoned leaders. Before being given further responsibility, they would demonstrate their loyalty for years or even decades. It was a system based on official titles, hierarchy, and a well-defined chain of command. Public questioning of elders was forbidden, and breaking custom was frequently interpreted as immaturity or rebellion. But Pastor Lovy belongs to a new generation of leaders who didn't grow up through those similar paths. Like him, many of them established their ministries outside the established denominations, using online teaching platforms, social media, and live streaming to engage audiences directly. They understand how to package sermons for YouTube and Instagram, speak the language of the digital era, and consider themselves to be global voices rather than merely local pastors. For leaders like Lovy, this strategy has produced amazing growth, but it has also caused conflict. This new wave is frequently perceived by traditional leaders as avoiding responsibility, ignoring the knowledge of the past, and pursuing fame over spirituality. Younger pastors contend that the outdated structure can be oppressive, divisive, and unresponsive to critical reform. In actuality, each side has merit. The elder generation established their ministry during a period when denominational backing, longevity, and community reputation were the main factors that determined legitimacy. In a world where influence can be created overnight through charisma, relatability, and viral moments, the younger generation flourishes. Because each man represents his own side, the conflict between Lovy and Morton is intensified. Morton's viewpoint is evidently that of someone who has spent decades fighting to build a platform and is committed to defending it. Lovy talks from the belief that human gatekeepers are not necessary for his purpose, which comes straight from God. In many respects, Bishop Morton wasn't the only target of the "you don't control me" moment. It made a statement about a whole leadership structure that many young ministers believe is no longer relevant. Furthermore, Lovy's remarks probably reflected more than just personal disobedience to Morton. They represented the escalating opposition from a generation that was unwilling to comply as earlier generations had. The way people react on social media is another way that this generational gap is manifesting itself. Lovy's fans portray him as a trailblazer who defies antiquated customs. Supporters of Morton believe that he upholds the integrity of church leadership and defends biblical order. Both stories are compelling and receiving a lot of attention. This is where things become even more difficult, though. This is a problem that transcends generations. No one has yet to adequately discuss the financial, political, and influence-driven dynamics at work. Additionally, it becomes apparent that this feud may have many more facets than either side like to publicly acknowledge when you start to follow the money and the power. Rarely are public disagreements in the church world limited to theological or leadership philosophies. Deeper layers including money, influence, and resource control lie behind almost every significant conflict. Furthermore, the political and financial stakes in the case of Bishop Paul Morton and Pastor Lovy might be far higher than most people think. Since influence is valuable in today's religious environment, let's start with discussing influence. Unlike many traditional church leaders, Pastor Lovy has a wide reach. With services that are transmitted worldwide to a global audience, his ministry, Revelation Church, attracts thousands of people both in person and virtually. His social media following dwarfs that of many well-known bishops, and his sermons are presented in a way that makes them simple to read and share online. This reach results in collaborations, invitations to events, book agreements, and even possibilities to be featured in mainstream media. Bishop Morton, however, has institutional influence, which is a different kind of influence. Morton has access to several church networks, conferences, and benefactors, thanks to Fellowship International, the Full Gospel Baptist Church, and decades of networking. His name still opens doors in influential political and religious circles, even though his social media presence may not be as strong as Lovy's. Access to prominent religious events, partnerships with gospel music heavyweights, and connections with significant benefactors who can finance extensive ministry initiatives have all been part of Morton's sphere of influence for decades. The tension increases at this point. According to some insiders, rivalry for audiences and platforms is a contributing factor in the conflict. Big church gatherings, particularly those with well-known speakers, are important for both financial and ministry impact. A ministry can be sustained for years by the book sales, higher donations, and enhanced awareness that a featured speaking slot can provide. Rumor has it that Lovy has previously been discussed joining specific conference lineups under Morton's network, but only if he more closely aligns with Morton's spiritual covering. It was thought that in return for the responsibility and alignment, Morton could give Lovy more visibility. However, those chances apparently dried up when Lovy refused, opting to maintain his ministry's complete independence. Additionally, there is the money itself. Tithes are not the exclusive source of funding for large ministries. Partnerships, sponsorships, and large donations from corporate executives frequently help them. Although both Morton and Lovy have access to affluent supporters, it is often the case that large funders favor stability, which frequently entails aligning with established leaders. For Morton, Love's self-sufficient position could appear to be a danger to that order. Lovy is unwilling to accept the proposal that he must make in order to obtain financial support. Political factors should also be taken into account. Large following church leaders frequently have a subtle impact on regional and even national politics. Prominent pastors' endorsements have the power to influence elections, public campaigns, and policy choices, particularly in areas where the church is a major institution. In certain respects, losing control over someone like Lovy is equivalent to losing a possible ally in certain political arenas. The "you don't control me" statement wasn't only a retort in a church fight. When you put everything together, it was a rejection of a whole system that combines spiritual, political, and economical power. In essence, Lovy was stating in public that he would sooner risk losing some platforms, funders, and contacts than entrusting his ministry to someone else. However, with the stakes so high, the issue is, how far will each guy go to defend himself? Because this appears to be more than simply angry rhetoric. Legacy is at issue. Lovy is working to set a new benchmark for ministry operations on the digital platform, while Morton is trying to maintain a leadership paradigm that has shaped his career.